All right, welcome back, Southeastern 14. We're here with episode 5, Nathaniel.
Yes.
Is it 5?
I know, Blake. You're struggling to count. That's not good.
Oh man, I tell you, I think it's episode 5. It's NCAA tournament week. My brain, honestly, early in the day, I thought it was Friday. I don't know how I thought it was Friday, but somehow my brain convinced me it was Friday. It's not Friday. It's
I
Tuesday.
wish.
Recording this. Yes, because if it was Friday, the reason we do this show, the Lady Vols, will be playing on Saturday, of course. So we'd be a day away. Unfortunately, we're not yet there, but we do have NCAA tournament to talk about, Nathaniel. And before we get into it, let's go ahead and just talk about Rickea Jackson because we'll obviously spend a lot of time on this episode looking at the tournament matchups and the breakdown and everything. But she did announce that would have been on Monday, not Friday, that she would be returning to Tennessee. She put out a tweet and it said, I have been so happy during my time on Rocky Top. I'm so grateful for my teammates and coaches and the endless bonds that I've created while being here. I appreciate all the support from our amazing fans for making this transition to University of Tennessee so worth it. But we're not done yet. I'm coming back for another year. So that was the quote she put out on Twitter. And I think Nathaniel probably make a few people happy that she's returning, I would say.
Not including me. I wasn't happy at all when she made that announcement. But I mean, we already talked about last episode about Tamari Key coming back and how to me that changed kind of how I was feeling about next season. Well, Rickea Jackson coming back for another year, that definitely changes how I feel about next season because you have truly elite scoring capabilities next season with Rickea there and returning, still a good amount of players from this year's squad. You look at someone like Sarah Puckett or Caroline Stripling and Jillian Hollingshed as well as some of the main players, but also Tess Darby coming back too. And you have a lot of players returning that, you were excited about next year, but no one that has really proven that they can score at a high volume to really kickstart that offense that needs to be, that you would need. And Rickea obviously does that a whole lot. Now the next question, I guess, Blake, is going to be: does Jordan Horston also return? We'll see if she makes an announcement anytime soon, before the tournament or after or whatever. Maybe she's going to wait until after the tournament's over to really judge and see. But that's for her to decide whether or not she wants to use that last year of eligibility she has. But regardless, I mean, Rickea Jackson has been an absolute game changer for this team as the season progressed. Again, we talked about it last week when we were talking about the all SEC teams, fighting back from the adversity of the beginning of the season where she was benched. And when she came back, she was not playing in a very big role for the first few games that she came back. And then the run she went on where she scored 20 plus points, I think in 6 or 7 straight games up until the South Carolina game in the SEC tournament final. Like, she was on an unreal tear. One of the better. She did something in the SEC tournament that no Lady Vol had ever done, and that's saying something. It's not a rinky dink little program. If you do something that no other Lady Vol player, if you set a Lady Vol record, that's very impressive. So she did, with her scoring in. I want to say it was. I think it was the LSU game. She set a record for most points scored by Lady Vol in an SEC tournament game. I mean, she's been lights out lately. I think she's finally come into her own at Tennessee. And I think too, Blake, this really speaks to the culture. I mean, that's an overused word, I know, but it really does speak to the culture that I think has been set in Knoxville by Kelly Harper, and her coaching staff. That these types of players, a potential top 5 WNBA draft pick, wants to come back. And yes, I know that's probably not all of it. I imagine there's some NIL stuff, I'm not privy to that info, but I know, unfortunately, on the women's side, what they can make on the NIL side of things in college isn't that much different than what you are going to get paid in the WNBA, which is more of an indictment on the WNBA than it is what the NIL is for women's athletics. Because actually, women's athletics NIL deals are pretty lucrative. But it's more of a knock on the WNBA and the lack of money there. But aside from all that, the whole thing being Rickea Jackson coming back for next year. I mean, this team already had momentum going into the NCAA tournament, already had a lot of talk about them playing a lot better. There's going to be a lot more talk now about Rickea Jackson coming back, and just the Lady Vols are going to be talked about, hopefully positively over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully that, they can go on a little bit of a run. But heading into this tournament, I mean, they already were being talked about quite a bit by national and regional pundits, about the way they've been playing lately. And the only they haven't lost to a team besides South Carolina since I think that LSU loss, back in mid-February, I want to say. So it's been a while since they've lost to somebody that wasn't the undisputed best team in the country. So they're playing better. Rickea Jackson coming back. I mean, it's been a very, man, like it's been a really solid last few weeks for the Lady Vols, with Tamari Key coming back, with you beating LSU in the tournament to get to the first SEC tournament final since 2015. Now Rickea Jackson coming back. I mean, and getting the, as we'll talk about in a second, getting the 4 seed and being able to host in the NCAA tournament for, the second straight year. And obviously it's hopefully a return to form for the Lady Vols to be able to host, but for the second straight year being a 4 seed. So it's been a really nice run of a few weeks here for Lady Vol fans and for the team.
Yep. No, it has. I mean, think about it. We were probably a couple episodes back, we started looking ahead and we're like, oh yeah, look at the, the mock draft projections for the WNBA draft. We're like, oh yeah, there's Rickea Jackson at 5 to Dallas. There's Jordan Horston at 6 to Atlanta. Well, one piece of the puzzle is now out of the picture. And so, yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's like you said, a lot of positive momentum right now. And I think, as you've talked about as well, it's for a program that is trying to get back to consistently having that positive momentum. There were certainly some times there over the years that was not the case. And so now trying to get back to that, that's definitely a big development, and for sure will be a huge thing we'll be talking about heading into next season, given Rickea Jackson's return. But there is still basketball to be played, and we now officially know. We had the debate. We said, is Tennessee going to be a 4? Are they going to be a 5? We knew it was going to be one or the other, and they wind up getting the nod for the 4 seed. And hey, it's not exactly, I think, a terrible draw when you look at the way it sets up. They are number 4 seed. They're in Virginia Tech's part of the bracket. Virginia Tech's the 1 seed there. You have UConn as the 2. Now, we did talk about that, maybe trying to avoid UConn, but they are the 2. Ohio State's the 3. And, of course, Tennessee is the 4 to play St. Louis. That game will take place where, Nathaniel? It's going to take place in Knoxville. So that, as we said, was the importance of trying to get one of those top 4 seeds. And so Tennessee gets it, plays St. Louis. The 5-12 matchup is Iowa State and Toledo. But, Nathaniel, I mean, I think overall we kind of talked about it again, just the value of getting the 4 seed. They get the 4 seed. I mean, you got to be thrilled with that, because once again, that now gives you an opportunity to play a couple games potentially on your home floor. And, you kind of like, I think, the setup there heading into just the way that this bracket falls with those 4 teams.
Yeah, and I imagine it's going to be a really good crowd. I know for a fact the first game is going to be a good crowd, because I bought tickets, and when I was looking at tickets, there was already the main bowl section was already pretty full, like pretty taken, except for I think the seats behind the baskets were still a pretty decent amount there. But I bought my ticket I think Monday, like not long after they went on sale. A lot of them are already being snatched up, so I imagine it's going to be a pretty big crowd for the first game. And obviously we'll talk a little bit more in depth, I guess, about the first opponent in a second, but I would be stunned if the Lady Vols don't handle business against St. Louis. So I imagine we'll get, just like last year, 2 games in Knoxville for the NCAA tournament for the Lady Vols. But again, I imagine it's going to be fun, because I think there's a lot of optimism. Last year, you looked at, they made it to the Sweet 16, which was actually the first time in several years that the Lady Vols made it to the Sweet 16. But you had Jordan Horston being hurt and unsure if she was going to return. You'd already lost. We had Ray Burrell playing, but clearly was not at 100%. Like, you were hoping she would. You'd already lost Kean Green for a while. Jordan Horston was out and unsure if she's going to come back. And you're thinking, okay, maybe she can come back for the Sweet 16 game against Louisville. She ultimately did not. I just don't think the optimism. I think getting to the Sweet 16 last year, fans felt, okay, that's good. That's about where this team, unfortunately, due to injuries, that's a nice landing spot for this team. Not expecting to beat Louisville, and clearly it didn't. I think there's a lot more optimism for this year with the way the regular season has closed out, with the way the Lady Vols played in the SEC tournament, and as you just said too, with the way the bracket kind of lays out. It's not. There's no such thing as an easy draw, but I think this is a more favorable draw than I was expecting for the Lady Vols to get as a low end 4 seed. They're in this, as you mentioned, the Seattle 3 region, where the number 1 seed is a team they played already this year in Virginia Tech. I would love to see that rematch, because that was a game that was really close. Lady Vols lost by 3 in that game, and it was fairly close, I think, throughout the entire game. If I remember, it's been forever since that game happened. But you look at I guess we can start some of the breakdown here too. The Lady Vols play St. Louis, which Blake,
what a story that is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm also going to be honest. Like, I'm surprised St. Louis is a 13 seed. Like, I don't know what went into the committee's decision for some of the rankings, but they're 500. They're a team that they don't do a whole lot well. They don't shoot the three very well at all. They have a really good post player. They have a really good guard, but they don't match up well with Lady Vols at all. They've played, looking at 10 of 2 comparable opponents to what the Lady Vols, kind of caliber are. They lost to Baylor by 34 and Missouri by 30. I mean, though that was also earlier in the season. St. Louis is playing better. I think they've won 6 straight and 11 of their last 12. So they are playing better than they were at the beginning of the year.
16.
Right. Yeah.
That.
So they were 6 and 16.
And they're in the NCAA tournament. Yeah.
So they are playing. They are, to your credit,
Yes.
they are playing a lot better. I just would be stunned if the Lady Vols, get upset by them. So we can break them down a little bit more, but I also have been trying to look ahead a little bit to the potential second round matchup of what happens in the Iowa State Toledo game, which I think is a lot more evenly matched. But Blake, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add about St. Louis. Like you said, going from 6 and 16 to winning their conference tournament and getting into the NCAA tournament, that is highly impressive. They've stormed out of nowhere to do that. Unfortunately for them, they're running into a team of Lady Vols who are also playing better than they were a month and a half ago, and playing on their home court. And I think the Lady Vols match up really well with this St. Louis team. They have good, they have size. They have really good post players, I mentioned, and they have other post players who have really good size that are depth players, but it doesn't really seem like they play a whole lot of minutes. So I don't, obviously I haven't watched St. Louis women's basketball, but it seems like they go a little bit more smaller across the board, which Lady Vols already rebound really well. I would imagine they should be able to control the boards in this one. So obviously, Blake, add anything else you want to before we kind of look ahead a little bit. But I'm fairly confident in the Lady Vols' ability to win this first game and get to at least the second round.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's wild just looking at this team. When I was looking at making notes, I'm like, they were 6 and 16. Like that's where they were. And yet, on the flip side, right, there's probably not a hotter team in terms of just how they're playing, and they have all the confidence right now in completely turning their season around. I think that they beat UMass, which was the top seed in the A10. They beat them in overtime in the championship game to get here. And I think specifically there are 3 players that you really look at here, and I don't want to discount fourth because they've got 4 people who are averaging basically about 10 points to 17 points. Kyla McMakin is around 17 points a game, so that's obviously priority number 1 when you look at what she brings to the table. But someone like Brooke Flowers, I know she averages about 12 points, 9.5 rebounds, 4 blocks. So, it's how she can kind of impact the game, perhaps. Looking at that, I think, and I'm looking at the notes here, Julia Martinez, who averages, I think, 9 points, or actually about 10 points, 8 rebounds. She had a triple-double in the championship game, and I'm trying to find the exact stat line on what she had there, but I know that's what she had because I'm reading it. I just can't find the stats for it. Okay, so she had 17 points, 13 rebounds, and 12 assists. She also had 4 steals in that game. So a pretty impressive stat line there. So those are kind of the 3 that I have circled here. Peyton Kennedy's another one. She averages 9.8 points per game. So again, remember what we have to do with those kind of stats, right? We have to take them in the context of the competition as well, and that's not knocking any of these players. It's just pointing out, look, it's not exactly going up against the SEC competition every night. And so when you break down kind of these games, you have to sort of put some of that in context. But still, I think there is something to a team that is playing as well as it's played all season. And, that's how you get to the NCAA tournament. And hey, they're not going to lack confidence. I think we can say that. And so it's just a matter of, can you get, those strengths out of all of these players? You see what they do well. Can they be a team that can do that well against the Tennessee? That's the question. I don't think they, like I said earlier, they don't shoot the 3 well. I think they shoot about 40% from the floor as a team. So, that's not, that's not great. So, those kind of things. And like you said, if you just break it down just from a roster standpoint, there is some size and such. But I tend to think that even though they've been on this run, obviously they've not seen a team like Tennessee. And so it's really hard just to kind of gauge exactly what to expect. They played, I think I look back at it, they played one top 25 team this season. That was Baylor.
Yep.
They lost by 34 in that one. Of course, that was early in the season too. They did lose at Missouri. I'm not sure if you brought that up. They lost by 30 at Missouri earlier in the season as well. And so yeah, I mean, take that for what it's worth, right? But if you do sort of project them ahead and you start to look at the possibility of the 5-12, right? It doesn't matter if it's men's or women's. We always look at the 5-12 and we find them fascinating because there's a lot of things you can look at there and point out. Okay, is there potential for one of these 5-12 upsets that are very popular with people when you're looking at these? I mean, Iowa State certainly a team. I think that look, they're a 5 seed for a reason, right? They won 22 games. Kind of the opposite of St. Louis, where they started off really well. Then they kind of hit a dip there towards the end, playing some good teams in the Big 12. They've won 4 in a row to get to this point. That included wins over Texas, Oklahoma. So I think you kind of look at just the way their stats break down, kind of studying them. Obviously, anytime you have someone who can score 22 points a game in the power conference level, that's something to be concerned about. Ashley Jones obviously can do that. Also averages basically 10 rebounds a game. So basically averaging a double-double. That's a player you have to keep your eye on. They've got some people that can score. But on the flip side, Nathaniel, I know you've looked at it. Toledo's an interesting team as a 12 seed, and that's something else that I think that's worth considering.
Yeah, and really quick, before I want to go back to St. Louis really briefly here. Two things to kind of note for them is, one, you brought this up before the Lady Vols played Auburn. St. Louis does do a good job with steals. They actually do force turnovers a lot. Looking at Martinez, their starting point guard, she averages almost 3.5 steals per game. And then I guess actually she's starting guard. Calhoun's the point guard, and she averages 2 steals per game. I think as a team, they average just under 10. Like they average over 9 steals per game as a team. So that's something to keep in mind. They do shoot the free throws really well as well. You mentioned they don't shoot great from the floor, but they do shoot free throws pretty solidly. But when you look at the fact that I mentioned this lack of size, Kennedy as the other kind of starting forward along with Flowers, who Flowers is really good. This is the first year she hasn't averaged a double-double in a few years, and she just about is 12 and 9.4. So, and averaging, like you said, almost 4 blocks per game. But Kennedy is their other starting forward. She's 5'11" as a starting forward, which Lady Vols have guards taller than her. And there is a guard / forward that comes off the bench for them in the Castro, who is 6'2". So, I mean, I just think from the size advantage the Lady Vols have a lot there, and they're a better offensive team, I think, than what St. Louis is. But yes, to go to the 5-12 matchup to look at who the Lady Vols could potentially play, because I do think even though St. Louis is, I think, going to be, like you said, not lacking confidence, going to be scrappy, and I think they might play similarly to what Auburn did, where they, make it a little bit of a messier game for the Lady Vols. Lady Vols are going to have to be on their, pay attention, not have a bunch of unforced errors, because St. Louis is already going to force a lot of them, I think. So Lady Vols are more than capable of being upset. I just don't think it happens. But like you said, Iowa State, Toledo, this is a really intriguing matchup. It's a team that, or 2 teams, that I think are fairly evenly matched. Toledo has a very solid defense. They're giving up just over 62 points per game, and offense is averaging 73.5. So that's a really good margin there. They're 28-4. The 4 losses, or a couple of the losses they have, were to Duke and I think Northern Illinois, and like they have 2 conference losses. They beat Michigan, which, I mean, Michigan's maybe not a powerhouse, but that's still a Power 5 team that they beat. It's a very, I think, a very good Toledo team that possibly underseeded. I know it's a smaller school, but I think in the last few years we've seen mid majors in the women's game start to play a little better and start pulling off some more of these upsets like we were kind of used to seeing mid majors do on the men's side. That's why I do think it's definitely a lot more of a March Madness in the women's side over the last 4 or 5 years than it had been in previous years. You still have that top echelon that most of the time you do see a lot more chalk in the women's game than the men's game, but the mid majors are getting better. Just the overall depth of women's basketball is getting better. And this is definitely not a cakewalk for Iowa State. They're a good team too. Don't get me wrong. They've got some good quality wins as well. You look at, they beat Texas twice. They beat Villanova, but they've also lost, no shame in losing to Iowa. They're a darn good team, but Iowa State, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this game plays out, because if you're Tennessee, you would much rather play in theory, a Toledo team because they're the lower seed. But I don't know. Toledo, to me, Blake.
Not
I didn't get to
bad.
do as much research on them as I wanted to, but both these teams are good teams. I think whoever the Lady Vols, assuming they move on to the second round, whoever the Lady Vols play, it's going to be a very solid team, a team that is going to be very competitive against them.
Yeah, no, I think it's a curious sort of deal, trying to figure out exactly, how the matchup's going to play out, because I think you can find things on both sides, and certainly, like we said, you look at just sort of you just like we talked about the people who can do a lot of everything, and I feel like Iowa State definitely has that. We talk about sometimes just like how the stars can sort of carry you in these kind of games, and having that top level talent that can put you in those positions to win these kind of games. But then you look at Toledo, as we mentioned. I mean, that's a team too that you just kind of. I mean, hey, they've only lost 4 games this season. A team that's played 32 and has only lost 4. Sometimes it's not a lot harder than that when you just look at a team that really can build some confidence. As we said, look at some of the games they played, beat Michigan, lost to Duke, lost to Penn State. But, I mean, that's a team that, I mean, they haven't lost a game since Bowling Green. That was on, I'm trying to find the date here. Don't know exactly when it was. It's a long time ago. Let's just put it that way. It's been a while since they've lost. So I think that's certainly worth considering. Yeah, so they were 12-4 then. So I want to say, Nathaniel, they've won 16 in a row. So that's not a bad streak to be on when you're heading into an NCAA tournament type setting. But Iowa State did go through the grind of a Big 12, and I think there's something to that too, just in terms of the way they played. When you kind of look at Iowa State back into the pre-conference portion. Losses to North Carolina, Iowa, not necessarily anything to be upset about. Lost to Oklahoma as well, and kind of going into the Big 12. But I'm very curious about that matchup. Again, we're not trying to overlook the Tennessee St. Louis one, but if you are trying to project ahead, I think you look at those two teams, you can find some intriguing elements. I think for both of those teams with Iowa State. And kind of looking at what Toledo can do. So,
yeah, the thing that with Toledo, I mean, like you said, like we both have said, they're a very good team, and I think they do a lot well. And they shoot the 3 ball really well as a team. The thing with them though is they're going to have to shoot a lot of threes and make a lot of threes, because Iowa State is going to absolutely dominate them in the size department and in the rebounding department. Ashley Jones, who averages 21.5, one of the top 10 scorers in women's basketball, and also 9.6 boards. I was looking through the roster for Toledo, looking kind of like the main role players. I think they have one girl who they play regularly who's 6 foot. Jones is 6'1". They have Donarski, who is 6 foot. They have Emily Ryan, who's 5'11", and then they have Danae Fritz, who's also 5'11". That's like their main starting 5. You also have Neymar Dio. I'm not sure his her last name, but she's 6'2" off the bench. So, I mean, as much as I like Toledo, and much as I think they're a good team, like Iowa State's just going to tower over them. And I think if Toledo's going to win, they're going to have to do it from 3 because, but then again, Iowa State's not a bad 3-point shooting team. I just think it's going to be Iowa State in this game to me, but I think Toledo has a really good, has a good chance of winning. But the more I dug into it, the more I thought, that size of Iowa State, they're one of the few teams I think that can compete with the Lady Vols from a size perspective in terms of, one, from 5 on down to 1 has size. I mean, Lady Vols don't have a whole lot of size at the 1 position, but from 5 to 2, Lady Vols have a lot of size, and Iowa State 6'2", 6 foot. I mean, they have a lot of play, and 6'2" again, just a lot of size. And again, it's not like they shoot poorly either. Jones is a 33.5% 3-point shooter. Ryan hits 37%, and then you have a couple other ones around the 33% mark from 3 as well. So, and then Kane off the bench hits 40%. So, not as prolific of a 3-point shooting team as Toledo, but looking ahead, I think it'll be Iowa State that advances in that one, Blake. But regardless, like we were saying, it's going to be a good team that Lady Vols play. But if they get past that second round onto the Sweet 16, you're looking at a very potential matchup again against a team that the Lady Vols already played this year in Virginia Tech. And if the Lady Vols get past Virginia Tech, I desperately, Blake, want this to happen. I want there to be a Tennessee UConn Elite 8. I don't think they've ever played in the NCAA tournament. Every time they've played has been regular season. To my knowledge, they have not played. Well, I know I'm forgetting one. I feel like they for sure have, and I feel like there's going to be commenters yelling at me that they for sure.
There was one at some point. I remember it. I just don't remember when it was. But yes,
I'm gonna look it up while you talk because I know I'm forgetting it and I don't want to get yelled at. So I'm gonna look up while you talk.
Well,
but I desperately need that in my life. I need a Tennessee UConn Elite Eight, the chance to go to the Final Four, because obviously, I would love it if it was for the, in the Final Four or national championship, but the way the bracket sets up, that's not going to happen. But UConn is the 2 in the Vols region, so yeah, I want that really badly.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I don't know. Just one last note on Iowa State Toledo. I just realized this. The Bill Fennelly, the coach for Iowa State, he's only coached at one other place in his head coaching career. You know where that is, Nathaniel? Toledo. Because of course the NCAA loves themselves some storylines, right? They love those little storylines that can be put into the tournament. I'm good with that. So yeah, so that's an interesting.
That's pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's been at Iowa State since '95, but before that, he started his career at Toledo in 1988. So, yeah, he's been there a long time at Iowa State, but it's his former team. Although that was
by the
several
way,
decades.
Vols have played UConn. It was 2000 is when they played them, and I'm trying to. Or sorry, no wait, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm looking at the men's side. I'll get there eventually.
We'll find it. We'll just say they played, and you guys can tell us the year. How about that in the comments? Because yes, we're aware they played at one point. It's just I know it all runs together at this point, but that is kind of where things stand. Like you said, we know it's an interesting side of the bracket, but of course the important part I think is anyone who gets to avoid South Carolina sitting in a nice spot, and Tennessee at least did that, and we'll not see South Carolina until a national championship game. Would be the only way that would happen. Of course, should they make a run, there's LSU in the bracket above, which is the Greenville 2. LSU at 3 seed, and everybody. I mean, Alabama's a 10 seed with Tennessee in the Seattle 3 region. Stanford, of course, the other number 1 seed. Ole Miss is there as an 8. Georgia's there as a 10. So that's kind of your SEC, representatives in this tournament. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see how this thing plays out, because I think there are a lot of SEC teams with high expectations. We know one in particular at the top, but LSU has high expectations. Tennessee has high expectations. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how these teams fare in this tournament.
Yeah, no, it will be. There's the SEC teams in particular are going to have.
I forgot Mississippi State too.
See what they do.
Well, they're also in the first 4, just like the men's team is. I forgot about that. So
yeah, I thought it's interesting. Both of them are in the first 4 in, or I guess last 4 in technically.
Yes,
but the first 4 games. By the way, Lady Vols and UConn have most definitely played in the NCAA tournament. It's just been a while. It's been since 2004. But they played in 04. They played in 03. They played in 02. They played in 2000.
I knew there was a run there for a while.
Yes, 96, 95. I just don't remember those as well. Clearly, or I would have remembered that. I felt like I was like, I feel like they played in the early 2000s, and I just was forgetting one. Looks like I forgot multiple of them. So, there was a run there where they were playing each other in the Final Four or title game. That looks like many years in a row, just about. So, yeah, that's right. I should have known that, but obviously, I was in the 90s. I was a child, and then early 2000s, I wasn't paying as much attention to college basketball at that point.
You're telling me you weren't doing bracketology in the early 2000s? So
I did start filling out brackets like in the newspaper when I was in middle school, I think, maybe even elementary school. So I did start doing that, where you get it in the paper the next day, and I wasn't filling out my picks, but I guess I was filling out when the games would happen and actually keeping along with it. I don't know when I started making my own picks, but no, I can't say I was doing it when I was 7 or 8.
Yeah, probably not. But anyways, it will be a lot of fun. As we said, the bracket is officially out. Always a fun time of year. I think this is the best week of the year in terms of specifically college basketball. You see these first couple round games, both on the men's and women's side, and always fun to see kind of how they unfold. So, Nathaniel, there are thoughts on kind of where things stand for Tennessee. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. Again, apologize for the for forgetting about Tennessee and UConn in the NCAA tournament. But I think again, it's going to be an exciting time this weekend. Lady Vols playing at 1, and then hopefully again they'll play on, I guess, Monday is when the second game will be. So hopefully we'll get to see 2 games for the Lady Vols in Knoxville for the NCAA tournament. I know it's not the women's side, but hopefully on the men's side we'll get to see. Hopefully both teams make it to the Sweet 16. I don't know if they will, but I think the Lady Vols have to me a better chance of doing so. I think the more we talked about it, Blake, the more I got excited about the potential Iowa State Tennessee game, because I think that would be a really exciting one. I would like to see how those 2 teams match up from a size and physicality perspective. But man, I think this Lady Vol team has the potential to make a at least a decent run, at least to the Sweet 16, maybe to the Elite 8. Again, I mean, they played UConn earlier this season. What do they learn from that? Lady Vols are playing better than what they were when they played UConn the first time. Of course, UConn is now also a little bit healthier, and they're playing a little bit better than they did around that time too. So again, maybe it doesn't come to that. I would love for that to happen though. But that's all I'm going to say, Blake. I think next week's episode, hopefully, we'll be talking about the Lady Vols playing in the Sweet 16. So be on the lookout for that, and maybe also we'll have more good news in terms of maybe some other players will announce they're coming back for next year.
Yep, we will see. Perhaps more games to discuss next week. But of course, if you want to get all that, you got to hit the subscribe button here at Southeastern 14. If you're just finding this randomly, you've never seen the channel before, we cover everything in the SEC, men's basketball, women's basketball, football, baseball, you name it. It's all there. So hit that subscribe button. That's the best way to keep up with this weekly show we do here with Nathaniel talking Lady Vols. So do that. Hit the like button as well. That helps us out. And again, we appreciate you watching, and we'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14.